Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. My name's Steve. If you're new to my channel, these videos are all about my Porsche 992 Carrera. And in today's video, I'm going to do a comparison between the 718 Cayman and the 992 Carrera. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you will see that I did one video about what it cost me to own a 718 Cayman. I had that car for nearly a year, and the only reason I really sold it was because I'd cleared the finance in an attempt to get a mortgage application processed. I didn't actually end up going on to buy a house, and in my wisdom I decided to go and put a deposit down on a 992 last October. So because I've owned both cars, I thought that I would do a little bit of a review style comparison to basically outline what I think the differences and maybe some of the similarities are for anybody that's maybe looking to get into one of these cars and may not want to spend the money on going all the way to the 911. Okay, so the first immediate thing that you're going to point to, probably looking at both cars, is obviously the looks. Now, the Cayman takes on its own shape because it's mid-engined, which gives it a slightly different silhouette to the 911. The 911 still follows the classic lines and it's still got the engine in the rear. This difference is mostly dictated by the fact that the Cayman is only a two-seater and the 911 is technically a 2+2. Now in the 718 you've got some storage in the rear of the car behind that engine. In the 911 you haven't got that storage because you've got an engine there, so you end up with this 2+2 rear seat scenario. It does make both cars look slightly different shape-wise. I would say personally, obviously the 911 is a pretty looking car. The 911's been going for a long time now using a similar shape. Okay, it's got bigger, but it's still following the same basic outline. The Cayman's come in there as a poorer man's Porsche in some people's eyes. In Porsche's mentality, it's an entry level and it's priced at that point. Having said that, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and some people might like that design better than the 911. My personal opinion on both cars is that although the 718 Cayman isn't as good looking a car as the 992, it has its own design. I didn't think it was horrible. I don't really like the back end on the 718. I kind of like all the angles on a 992, but I do think both cars look great from that 3/4 angle. Because I've owned both, I'll probably side with the 911, but if you like the Cayman, you know, there's nothing wrong with that shape. The second big thing to look at on both cars is the interiors. Now I need to take a little bit of a step sideways and explain that the 718 range share a lot of the similar design characteristics of the previous 991 generation Carrera. The ethos for a while now with the Porsches is wherever they can share certain components across the cars, they do, and that was what brought them back to profitability when the first Boxster came in. You'll find that the 911 Cayman Boxster range at some point overlaps with similar design mentality. If I put up the interiors of both the 991 and the 718, you'll see that there is a very similar design pattern there. Most of the design differences in there seem to be mostly with the air vents. You'll see it follows a very similar pattern when it comes to the dash layout, the center console design, the way that the lines flow across the dash. The only main difference in there that's obvious is the 3 dials for the 718 and the 5 dials for the 991. So when it comes to the interior between the 992 and the 718, I can't make a fair comparison because we're working with two different generations in models. When the 718 gets replaced at some point in the near future, I expect that the 992 design inside will probably carry over to that 718 and we will see a very similar interior on the next car. I think again, unfortunately, I have to make an unfair comparison here and side with the 992 interior. I did like the 718 interior, and I think when they bring that interior across onto the car when they do a facelift, it will be absolutely brilliant in there as well. So really the other factor outside of exterior looks and probably the interior design is the cost. Obviously getting into a 718 Cayman at the bottom end is probably around half of what it costs to get into a 992 entry-level Carrera. You don't get front and rear sensors, you don't get full leather interiors, and you also, the big difference is going to be down in the performance end where you've got a 2-litre twin turbo as opposed to the 3-litre twin turbo. If you're interested in just getting into the Porsches, maybe the 718's a better bet on that line. If you want to go with the performance, you maybe want to go up there and get into that 992 range, then that is the price difference between the two. A couple of points I'm going to run through on both the car interiors that I think I would like to bring in here for anybody that's possibly weighing up either car. Although the 718 is a 2-seater design, you do get that extra rear storage with the tailgate. I did use that quite a lot. I did enjoy using that. With the 992, like I showed in the previous video, you do have those 2 rear seats there, but they have the ability to fold down and be used as storage. Would I prefer to have the storage in the 718 over the fold down seats in the 992? Yes, personally I would. I don't ever think they'll incorporate a tailgate design on a 992 because that's not its classic look, but if it was available, I would be more interested in being able to get access to rear storage that way than having to put the seats down. The other one point I would bring in with it being a two-seater, you don't get this problem too much with the Boxster because it's a soft top and it's got a slightly different design, but the B pillars in the 718, as you'll see in the photo that I've put up, are quite chunky. I did find when driving the 718 that rather wide B pillar was causing me a little bit of blind spot visibility. That's just a personal point. That was something that I experienced. I don't get that much of a problem with the 992 because of those rear seats being there. I find the B pillar is actually narrower. You've got a bigger window in the back passenger area, so I can see out that blind spot just a little bit more. Something you might want to think about if you're test driving it. Just check that out and see what you think, but that was something I did experience while driving the car. One comparable thing I can talk about when it comes to actually daily driving the car is I use both cars for the same journey, which was backwards and forwards to work every day, and it's still the same journey as I'm doing now in the 992. My personal experience is I think the 992 is actually more comfortable to drive. I think it rides the bumps better. I could be wrong, but I think it's probably something to do with the spring setup. It's probably a little bit harsher in the 718. Maybe there's a slightly different technology in the 992, but I do think as a daily driving car, the 992 works out better as a daily commuter over the 718. The practicality of both cars, I mean, you can't get a lot in either car. You're giving up rear space in a 718 with it being a two-seater to a little bit more storage in the back. I think that was a little bit more usable. The access to that was a bit better. You can get the tailgate up. You could even put stuff on the shelf in a 718 if you wanted to. The 992 is limited to what you can get through the doorway onto that back seat, but there is usable space there. The front trunk on both cars I believe is the same size, so you can get a couple of travel cases in there, but in reality neither car is going to be something you take to IKEA to get any flat pack furniture in, but if you're using it as a daily commuter, you've only got a couple of bags, you go backwards and forwards to work, you like to go out at the weekends and go away for a couple of days. In reality they're both usable for those day-to-day things. So if I was to sum up the practicality of both cars, I think I would say they're probably very similar, they're just laid out slightly differently. If you're interested in testing out the quality of the sports cars that Porsche have to offer, I would say do the route that I went. Go down the 718 route, give the car a try, see what you think of it. What I would probably say is if you're still thinking about it, maybe have a look and wait and see what the 718 replacement is going to be, because if they carry forward the interior from the 992 to the 718, I would probably want to have that interior over what's in there now, which is slightly older hat. If, on the other hand, you've always wanted a 911 and you're a bit like me, you just wanted to own a 911 and you eventually have the money to do so, yes, I would say go for that 992. I would personally say now that I'm there, having owned both, you just can't beat that 911 shape. If you've always admired it, once you own one and you drive one, you just get a different buzz to you do with the 718. What I would say is I can't fault either of the cars in particular, it's just they both have their own price point and they both have their own distinct design features, and I think you've got to gravitate to whatever you think suits you, how you're going to use the car, and maybe how much money you actually want to spend at the end of the day. For anybody that's undecided though, I think I would take a good look at that 718 GTS. The new 4-litre naturally aspirated car has got the performance of that 911 base model, but it's also slightly cheaper. So if you're looking for performance but you don't want to spend as much money, that looks like it might be a good bet. If you've enjoyed today's video, if you could please give it a like. If you want to see more about the 992, please hit that subscribe button, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again. Bye.